Welcome to the Packaging Experts Tell All show. This takes place the third Tuesday of each month at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. The purpose of our show is to provide stories, examples, and tips to help you buy packaging better. I'm your host, Sarah Scudder. I'm a growth strategist and help B2B companies with their marketing. I oversee marketing for Real Sourcing Network. We also go by RSN for short. We provide an innovative and painless way for companies to buy high quality print and packaging for less. We help companies design, re-engineer, and source their packaging. Our panelists have spent years in the packaging industry as buyers, consultants, and manufacturers. Each show, we pick a different packaging related topic. Today, we are talking about something that I think comes up in almost every single conversation that I have with people about packaging, and that's about sustainability and how companies can make their packaging more sustainable. So to kick off our discussion today, I'd like all of you that are joining us to put in the comments where you are joining us from. So where in the world are you? Go ahead and throw those into the comments. We also want this to be as interactive as possible. So anytime you have a question or comment for our panel today, feel free to put that in the comments and we will make sure to address that live, and we'll follow up with some written explanation as well. So again, please interact and engage with us as much as you would like. So I want to start off our discussion today by having each of the panelists introduce themselves, share an interesting personal fact, and then a favorite sustainable packaging story. So Dana, thank you so much for being with us today. It is great to have you on our show. So I'd love to have you kick off our introductions today.
Sounds good. Well, thanks first of all, Sarah, for inviting me to be part of the panelist. Give you a little bit of background. I'm Director of Procurement here at Birchwood Foods. And I've been in the packaging procurement arena for the last 20 plus years. I've worked for companies like Solo Cup Company buying resin and paper, as well as Cardinal Health, a packaging company, Pregis, and Kraft Foods for 8-9 years, all in packaging procurement. So I guess fun personal fact, I'm a bit of a thrill seeker. Last week I went snorkeling with sharks off the coast of La Paz in Mexico. So that's kind of my personal fun fact. So I guess my favorite sustainability story for packaging was I was part of the team at Kraft Foods that evaluated kind of the whole initiative to convert from glass to plastic. And, we had a lot of hurdles to overcome. There was, at the time there was our mayo, Miracle Whip, salad dressing, planters were all in glass bottles. And, when we kind of did the whole analysis, there was so many, looking at the total cost of ownership, so many significant cost savings as well as sustainability plays. So that went from the price of, plastic versus glass was not only cheaper, but, your carbon footprint, there's a lot more plastic manufacturers than glass manufacturers. So you're shipping bottles from usually a much closer distance, like on some even blue bottles on site versus or near site versus shipping glass from many miles away. There was also just the cube out. You tend to weigh out a truck with glass versus cubing out a truck. So just when we looked at the whole total picture, as well as breakage and downtime, you had a bottle break on the line, you're shut down. You've got to throw away product. The downtime associated with that was significant. I think and also the risk mitigation, because there were so few glass suppliers. in the industry, the plastic was a way to mitigate the consolidation in the glass industry. So when we looked at that, it was a strong business case to move a lot of our products from glass to plastic. I think the biggest hurdles that we had was really, the sales and marketing folks had said that the consumer perception was that glass was a much superior product over plastic. And there were kind of these sacred cow products like A1 and Grey Poupon that they didn't want to convert. But, we had done these, they did mock-ups and, without touching the bottles, you could barely see the difference between the two. And, it was interesting to see as consumers became more conscious on sustainability and, it became more important to them, really seeing how they embrace the change. And, we saw things, one of our suppliers at the time, Gateway Plastics, did a conversion on Gerber baby food containers from glass to plastic. And, I think seeing sacred cow packages like that make the conversion to plastic, I think, and seeing how people embrace that. I think now there's kind of the the next generation of, fiber-based packaging and kind of flexible packaging, pouches with spouts and things like that. So I think that was kind of a cool conversion to be a part of.
Awesome, Dana. Well, thank you again for being here. And it looks like you are actually joining us from a real office, unlike my room table.
I am. You can see how messy my office is, so I'll apologize in advance. But yeah, unfortunately, we're part of the meat industry and never really had a shutdown here. So we have been in the office every day. So
all right,
fully vaccinated. So that's good.
Awesome. All right, next up we have Tim. If you could introduce yourself, tell us an interesting fun fact, and then a favorite sustainable packaging story.
Okay, again, Sarah, thank you very much for inviting me to this distinguished panel. I've been involved in flexible packaging for over 34 years, from things like procurement, purchasing, ERP implementation, production management, and then general management. And people often say, oh, 34 years of experience, that's great. And I look back at some of the things I've seen over all that time and all the innovation and all the changes. And I sit back and say, actually, I think it's 1 year's experience 34 times. Because not only flexible packaging, but the rest of the packaging industry just continues to this day to evolve. And that's one of the topics today's topic, actually, sustainability. So again, having been involved for a long time, I ended up connecting with a 40-year plus commercial printing owner up in Greenville, North Carolina, who was just thrilled with flexible packaging and wanted to continue to diversify his business. And about a year and a half ago, well, gosh, it's been almost 2 years now, we put together a business plan and opened up a brand new state-of-the-art site on the back of his property, new building, built around flexible packaging and digital printing. So it's quite a plunge. It's doing something on our own and challenging, let's just say the least. I'm going to move around. There's no interesting facts about me. I just work all the time. That's probably the most interesting thing I can tell you. But a sustainable story that I'll reflect back in the early 2000s, working for a company in Charlotte, North Carolina. We worked with a large privately held South Carolina company to take a product in the market that was being sold in 1-gallon jugs, and with them developed a pouch to put 6 or 12 of these tablets into our pouches that went into the retail side of the business. And what they did is back in the day, you used to rent a rug cleaner that you would rent at your local Lowe's or Home Depot store, and you'd take it home. And when you rented the rug cleaner, you'd buy about 4 gallons of the cleaning solution. Well, the company down in South Carolina said, listen, that cleaning solution is 99.8% water, I believe. They developed a tablet to replace that cleaning solution. So now you rented that same unit, you brought it home, you bought a pouch that either had 6 tablets or 12 tablets, depending on how many rooms you want to clean. You put the tablet on the one side of that rug cleaning unit, and then you took tap water out of your faucet, filled it up to one side, put the top in, and then began your rug cleaning project. What that did was, if you think about it, that pouch with those 6 or 12 tablets replaced all those empty 1-gallon jugs that were blow molded, transferred from one facility to the manufacturer of this cleaning solution, that were filled to the brim, capped, and then put in a trailer to go to the distribution center that then went out to the store as well. I think the numbers we had ran through, 4 cartons of our finished pouches prior to being filled replaced 1 full trailer load of empty 1-gallon jugs. And again, all the carbon footprint of hauling those things all around. So that was a pretty exciting project for us, at least for me, back in the early 2000s. So.
And Tim, you just got off a plane this morning. So I have not been on a plane in over 12 months. So what was that like?
That was my first plane ride in 14 months since the cannabis conference out in California 14 months ago. And I will tell you, I was surprised at how crowded the Charlotte airport was when I returned this morning. It's almost like things were getting back to normal, except everybody's wearing masks. So when you bump into people or you see people, you're not sure if they're being friendly or mad at you. You just can't see their expressions. So it's a strange feeling. Everybody in masks all around the airport.
Well, Tim, thank you for being here. I know you rushed to somebody's house to be able to join us, so we're really glad to have you.
Thank you.
Next up is an RSN friend and partner, Mark. Really excited to have you here. I know Mark has spoken at some of our other events, and would love to have you introduce yourself and share a favorite sustainable packaging story.
Sure. First off, thank you again, Sarah, for including me in the panel. And welcome to the other panelists. I've seen a few of you before. Tim, good to see you again, as always, and hear your wisdom. It's a great experience. So pleasure to be here. My background is 28 years now of corporate procurement experience. I started a food manufacturing business in 1991, actually making frozen soft serve and regular sorbets and Italian ices. That's how I got my start in purchasing perishable materials and packaging way back in the early 90s. Since then, I went into consulting, and I've been a partner in a major consulting firm and led a procurement practice. And for the last 12 years, I've tried to focus exclusively in the area of packaging. And what I realized is that in most cases, packaging professionals who produce it and who sell it just understand it a lot better in most cases, not all cases, than the people who buy it. And I kind of felt that creates an imbalance. So about 5 years ago, in fact, 5 years and 2 months ago, in early 2016, I formed a company called Antares Consulting, and I brought with me a team of ex-packaging industry folks, people who have produced packaging, have costed packaging, engineered it, designed it, sold it, manufactured it over many, many decades. And I put them on a team together so we can kind of bridge that gap. So we bring actual packaging production and manufacturing expertise along with procurement expertise and combine that. And our goal is to not let that expertise reside with the suppliers, but rather bring it to the buyers and even that out. So a interesting fact, let me see, I can go way back to the early 90s. I think it's a little further than Tim went back. Let's go to about 93. Myself and my business partner at the time, we actually invented the world's first soft serve sorbet that worked out of a traditional yogurt machine that was all natural with no preservatives. That was decades ago when people cared about that, and all natural product was ultimately not particularly successful, but still it was I think a great accomplishment, even though it didn't last, but I enjoyed thinking about it nonetheless. I think also you asked for an example or an interesting potential story on sustainable packaging. Well, you know, when we think about sustainable packaging, at the end of the day, it's still, I think, a trade-off. It can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. Some people determine it or call it using more environmentally friendly materials, we heard some examples of less carbon footprint. All of these are really good uses of what we would consider sustainability. We like to right now focus on that third element of sustainability, which is how can we use fewer or less raw material in a package and still have it perform as well, if not better than it did before. So assuming that that's kind of our core operating principle these days with respect to sustainability, in the meantime, we're as technology advances and these alternative materials like Tim uses advances, there's going to be changes. But right now we're focused on how do we use less material. So I'll give you an interesting example. We worked with a client in California, your home state, not too far from you, Sarah, that produced in the food business that made fresh cut vegetables and bag salads, which is a huge business, especially it was during the real big shutdowns with the pandemic. So if you can imagine, they go through lots of corrugated boxes when you ship the product from the place where it's harvested to the place where it's processed and then off to the distribution centers and off ultimately to the retailers. So when we started studying the boxes, we realized that there might be a couple of areas where we could address the engineering and technological improvement, including things like moving the air holes that are die cut to promote airflow from the crease upwards, shrinking the size of those air holes. Those two things alone allowed the box to have greater stacking strength, and therefore we were able to use less paper in a redesign and achieve the same stacking strength by using 16% less paper. Now, when you use 16% less paper, that's an environmentally impressive attribute because we're using a lot less of the raw material. And on the other hand, it also saves a lot of money. It also stacks better, etc. So one of the other ancillary benefits that came from using redesigning the air holes and using less paper by creating SKUs that had air holes in the same locations, we were able to help the client enable the use of mixed pallets. So they could stack up all different fresh cut veg and bag SKUs. And now the airflow would be promoted throughout properly, whereas before they were not aligning and the airflow wouldn't really work their way through. So not only did we reduce the amount of paper, we made a stronger box, but we also created an environment where the air flows more effectively, the thermal performance of the packaging was better, and contents arrived in better shape and actually lasted longer. So there's I think a multi-pronged example of what the kinds of things that we can do with packaging to promote sustainability, given that third definition that we use today.
And Mark, it looks like it's nice weather in New York. What temperature?
A very warm day today. I'm proud to say it's in the 70s. So I'm recovering from a torn calf. So otherwise I would be out walking and running more. But it's our first real warm day this year. So we're excited to have it. It was well overdue.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thank you again for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Next up, we have Tom, and we are supposedly getting a guest appearance by his cat. So if we see a friend join us, we'll know who that is. So Tom, I would love to have you introduce yourself, share an interesting fact, and then talk about a sustainable packaging story that you've been involved with.
Sure. Thank you very much, Sarah. And thank you for the invite. This is my first experience with LinkedIn Live, so it's really exciting. Hopefully I don't bore people to tears. And it's nice meeting all the other panelists. My background is, let's put it this way, I'm going to say 35 plus years in the printing industry. I've started out initially in the commercial printing industry. And over that period of time, it's kind of evolved into more packaging related solutions. My primary focus is with small brands, startup companies that obviously their bandwidth and their investment capability is not fantastic when they're just getting started. So my background basically is to work as a generalist and help them facilitate their launch, how they go into the supply chain, how they go to market. I don't have the depth of experience with larger brands like some of the other members of the panel. But I would say the interesting sustainable fact is that people are very aggressively trying to come up with solutions, not just on the supply side, but also on the client side. People are very open to it. For me, it's an educational process. I've been in the printing industry a long time, but every day I realize how much more I have to learn. And I think we as a society as a species have to become engaged in it more and more. And I'm very heartened to see how much people have taken it on as an objective in their way of doing business. With that, I'll let Corey introduce himself, I guess.
All right, Tom, thank you again for being here. Corey, it is a pleasure. I met Corey on Clubhouse. He runs a club there and several packaging rooms. So really, really interesting, and so glad that we were able to connect. And I look forward to participating in future Clubhouse events. If you are looking to get more involved in sustainable packaging on Clubhouse, highly recommend you connect with Corey. He's hosting some really great rooms and conversations. So with that, Corey, if you could introduce yourself and share a favorite sustainable packaging story.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and Tom and Mark and Dana and Tim. You guys are amazing people. It's an honor to be up here with you. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about one of my favorite things, sustainable packaging. I'm Corey Connors. I've been with Landsberg Aurora for 18 years and as a packaging consultant or sales representative, depending on what year you asked. I absolutely love this job. It's something I learn new things every single day. I spent the first 5 years of my career before Landsberg making corrugated boxes to pay my way through college. And to me, that was the best education in packaging, working on the machines that make the boxes. So I can sit there and speak with my partners and actually help them with firsthand knowledge. So I highly recommend that to anybody interested in getting into packaging to at least spend some time on the floor with the production. One of my favorite things to do in this industry is to replace things that are less sustainable with things that are more sustainable. And a fun story, about 10 years ago, we replaced a foam and place system with a Rampack paper machine. And the operators of the foam and place system came over and showed me their holes in their shirts from the chemicals and shook my hand and thanked me for replacing this system because now they are not going to get chemical burns. They're not going to. It was a real eye opener for me. Not only are we eliminating unnecessary foam in the environment, and I'm not saying foam isn't ever a good choice, but in this situation, paper was a great option, and it actually saved the customer money. So everybody won. So thank you so much, Sarah. Appreciate it.
And Corey, are you in a real office today as well?
I'm in a home office, a spare bedroom, but it works for me. And like Dana, I've been fully vaccinated, so I'm thankful for that. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Corey. So Dana, I want to kick off the conversation today. I have some questions prepared for each of you. So I'm going to go ahead and start with you. So one of the things I hear a lot from companies is sustainable packaging is really overwhelming. We have no idea even where to start. It just seems like such a big task. We just don't even know how to get started. So Dana, given all of your experience, what are some things that you can recommend for a company to get started on their sustainable packaging journey? And then what are some things that you think are really important for them to consider as they start looking at sustainable packaging?
So, and I think Mark touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think the biggest thing is you need to ask questions and utilize your suppliers' resources and expertise. So, you know, we had about a week or 2 weeks ago, led a supplier innovation challenge day. You know, kind of gave them a brief of what we were looking for. And, you know, the sustainable packaging was kind of a theme that one of our customers was interested in getting more into. So I kind of threw it back at them and said, okay, you know, you've got designers, you have software, you know, these suppliers have software that can give you the the transportation utilization and how well you cube out a truck, they can, you know, put together kind of a whole business case for you. So I mean, we're, you know, Birchwood Foods is not as big as a craft food, so we don't have all the resources in purchasing to kind of go through and do all that work ourselves and scope all that out. So we really threw it back at the suppliers and kind of said, hey, you come to us with opportunities. And one of the kind of cool packages, we have a meatloaf. I don't know if you can see this, a meatloaf, and it's like a tray. It's got an over film and you know, or film inside here, as well as a carton, folding carton. And they had come, you know, one of our corrugated suppliers, Innovative Fiber, had come back with like some, you know, kind of looking at a corrugated microflute that you know, tear off the thing, and it's actually got a PLA laminated, an easy peel that, you know, it's a cookable tray. You can cook inside the tray, and then you just peel the liner off, throw that away, and then you can recycle this tray. So and the top rips off and everything. So I mean, it was kind of a cool, you know, here's another example, but it was kind of a cool thing that we threw back at them, you know, with just different concepts and things like that. I would say that, you know, and another one was our flexible film supplier came back with a monolayer flexible pouch that was more sustainable. It was down gauged, offer longer shelf life than our current multi-layer laminated structure. So, you know, it was, you know, those were two kind of like interesting concepts that I thought were good. I think the things to consider and think about is, you know, basically there could be, some of these could be at a premium cost. So I guess it depends on, you know, kind of your I mean, I think you have to play this up to your customer, as well as like your upper management support, and kind of saying, hey, how big of sustainability is our platform, and, you know, are we prepared to kind of undergo some of these things? You know, some of them, like the PLA resin, could potentially have a larger carbon footprint. So I think it's just kind of scoping that whole thing out. But like I said, utilizing your suppliers as resources, starting out with simple questions like, they may already be using recycled materials in your products. You know, like corrugate, a lot of them have recycled content in there. Plastics, a lot of them use, you know, a percentage of, whether it's, you know, kind of more the post-industrial side, maybe not post-consumer, but, you know, a lot of them already use some sort of recycled content. So I think it's, you know, asking some of those questions and utilizing them for their expertise and knowledge. And then doing your internal assessment of kind of where your category is today, and where, you know, an external assessment as well. So kind of scoping all that out and starting there.
Love the samples, Dana. Show and tell is always encouraged. I know Mark and Tim, when they were on our last panel, we got lots of fun samples. So thank you for bringing that in. I think you're absolutely right. You've got to ask the right questions and make sure you involve all the key stakeholders.
Right.
Doing a sustainable, what I call transformation, is not easy, and you really have to get buy-in, and it can be a big shift. So sometimes starting small and then working your way towards bigger can really help things.
Yep.
All right, Tim, I want to ask a question to you now, since you're actually a manufacturer. What are some of the most difficult aspects that you are seeing in regards to actually manufacturing the sustainable packaging? And then what industries are you seeing that are really adapting and pushing sustainable packaging more than others?
Okay, I'll start maybe with some of the things that Mark and Dana have already brought up. But part of the difficulty as a manufacturer, honestly, on the front end, is sometimes trying to educate and properly understand with your clients or your customers sustainability and what it means to them. And to start with, and again, I think Mark touched on it, we call it right sizing. many packages out there today are just over designed to make sure that you get that full billboard effect, full shelf space. And you get the product and you look at the finished pouch, and my gosh, only a third of it or half of it's filled with the product. The rest of it's just wasted film that may end up in a landfill or may end up some on the side of the road in that. So right sizing to start, trying to educate your customers. Can we help you do that? The second one is moving to structures that are more recyclable, like an all polyethylene structure like Dana had just touched on. We've seen that. We've helped customers move in that direction. And now the area that probably has consumed most of our activity recently in the new startup division that I'm working with, and that's, I'll call it bio-based packaging. And it's just, in what are the definitions of bio-based? Is it bio-based resins, or is it films, bio-based resins and films that are actually compostable? And then you get into the whole discussion, well, what do you mean by compostable? In my backyard or an industrial compostable? So there's a lot of education through the process. And if you look at the clients we've had most luck with or most success with today, it's really the new emerging brands in the areas of health food, healthy snacks, that are willing to come to market with a new product that they've got a great idea and they want to be totally sustainable. And you talk to them about all the things I just mentioned, and most of them will gravitate towards that compostable film that I mentioned. And there's still a lot of work and a lot of development being done there. The brands all want it, but I think the major brands all want this. But I think also the major brands realize there's a cost involved when you move down that path versus where they are today. So I mean, those are some of the things I guess we've struggled with. So as I said, emerging brands, healthy snacks, healthy foods, and cannabis. And that's probably about 60% of the activity to date that we've done, honestly, to be truthful with you, has been the area of CBD and cannabis packaging. And again, they want to be on the forefront of sustainable. They just don't want to come to market with the same old package that's been out there for the last 20 years.
So Tim, I'm in California, so cannabis is a very big market here. And I know that cannabis companies are really pushing and focused on sustainable packaging. What are you seeing some of the types of sustainable packaging that are working best for your cannabis clients?
The challenge right now is every state's got their own rules and regulations. But the challenge right now is with the child-resistant zipper or child-resistant closure feature that must be part of that package. And to date, and a lot of development work still being done, but to date, they haven't quite gotten over that hurdle yet with a child-resistant zipper that is compostable. The films are there, they've been trialed, they've been tested, but to match that up with a zipper that's going to give that child-resistant closure, it's close, but we're not quite there yet. So the packaging that we've used to date has been more the traditional packaging with a metallized polyester to a fairly thick sealant web to make a pouch with the child-resistant zipper.
Yeah, I know in California, I have friends in the industry and they say that as well. It's such a challenge because the rules and regulations are changing so much by state that it's just hard to keep up and develop something that works everywhere. So hopefully we'll see some things that are more systematized over the next couple of years.
Yep, there will be, and there's a lot of thought that within the next 2 years it'll be nationally legalized, but that's at least the people I talk to tell me that.
So, Mark, Tim mentioned one of the things around the cost of sustainable packaging, and it's something that I hear a lot. We want to do sustainable packaging. We want to do what's better for the environment. Our customers are pushing us and really focused on sustainable packaging, but how can we afford it? The costs are so much more. So talk to us about why some of the sustainable packaging is more expensive, and then what are some of the things you recommend that companies can do to keep the pricing in check?
Well, it's a really complex question, of course, and it lends itself to many answers. So I'm going to do my best. I'm not a scientist, and I certainly am not as well studied in environmental issues as other people in the world, but I'll give you my 2 cents on what's going on with that. First of all, it is a fact. Sustainable packaging can be more expensive, and in most cases, it is more expensive. It's more expensive because these are new materials and they're not produced in the same scale, in the same, and they're not as ubiquitous as the traditional materials. And frankly, so long as they're still, quote unquote, an alternative, it's going to be a more costly alternative. That said, there's another thing going on in the world right now that I'm sure, I know the panelists, especially Dana, who buys this stuff for a living, and Corey, who sells this stuff, are aware of. The raw material prices are staggering right now. And that goes for corrugated, which just took a $40 jump on Friday, beyond a $20 jump in March, and another jump last November. And then you look at what's going on in the resin markets, right? Resin's surging, all-time highs. So it makes it very, very difficult. Now people are thinking, how do I get my supply? How can I get the materials that I know I need now, let alone think about what I can do tomorrow to use more sustainable materials? So we're in a very difficult market situation. Okay, so our general philosophy is, and I think Tim hit this, and I know Dana talked about this, we're still in the nascency, if you will, of these sustainable materials. They're not there yet. They're not there yet. Certain things, like, for example, I know Dana held something up in the area of molded pulp. There's massive advance going on in the world of molded pulp, right? That's great. That's a great environmental impact. We see big changes, and I know a lot of new companies are bringing on capabilities and products, tremendous products that we've previewed in that space. We know that there are big things going on with hemp, right? It's not there yet, but it's going to be there in a couple of years. We see a lot of our clients right now moving towards reuse, refill, right? So instead of one-use plastic or one-use cosmetics, we're looking at customers that are now switching to alternative materials, taking it back, reusing it, refilling it, kind of closing off the loop, like they do in Europe in a lot of cases with fruit and with berries. So right now, though, with the raw materials prices the way they are, and with the sustainable materials being more in their nascency, it's just going to cost more. So to the point that Dana was making, and Tim, it's a trade-off. I mean, does your company want to get behind a full environmental blitz? Is that your brand? Is that what you're going for? In that case, you just have to be prepared to spend more. If it's not, then you come back to the trade-off is, what can I do from a performance standpoint with plastics or with other materials as compared to these newer materials? And I still think that there's a trade-off where you can have better performing product using a plastic packaging, right? So you're trading off, well, I'm not using the sustainable materials, but my food lasts longer, or the product arrives better, and therefore we're not wasting anything. So there's still just so many trade-offs in this area. You know, that said, our philosophy and where we're focused right now in the world that's happening today is these costs of raw materials make it more important than ever to limit the use of the raw materials because they're so expensive. So at this one point in time with surging prices, the focus of reducing the amount of raw materials in your package helps you on twofold. Not only can you get the sustainability benefit, you're doing the right thing by using less material, but you're actually going to save a lot more money because of the raw materials are so expensive. Again, there are new products on the horizon. I mean, we're privy to some that I obviously can't share, but I would agree with the panelists that probably we're 2 years away from seeing these things massively commercialized and the expansion and the distribution to the point where they're going to start really eating into the quote unquote traditional packaging films and materials. But here's what I suspect. All right. I suspect that once you see the permeation of these alternative and more environmentally friendly materials in the marketplace, lo and behold, we're going to see price reductions and in the quote unquote traditional materials, because right now they're the game in town and they know it, and they're jacking up prices whenever they can, right? Which is business. But at some point, the momentum is going to turn around as these alternative materials take hold and the pricing power moves to the alternative suppliers. You're going to see big drops in these pricing. But again, right now, what we're advising and what our focus is using less material. It's the easiest way to help the environment, and now it's a greater way to reduce costs.
And Mark, one of the things that I know that your team is really focused on is reducing weight. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something really important to note as well. When your packaging is lighter, it can really reduce costs in that your transportation costs are down. So I think that's something that we need to really focus on and think about as well.
Yeah, I agree. If you look at our corrugated lead, James Jones on my team, he always tells me this story, having been in the corrugated business for, I want to say decades, at least 20 years. You know, box companies, God bless them, but they're in the business of selling paper. They're in the business of selling more paper, not less paper. So we're in the business of helping you consume less paper. So fundamentally, there's a slight, loggerhead situation. So we're going to keep doing what we do, which is try to reduce the use of paper. And the corrugated companies are going to still do what they do, which is try to sell you more paper. Until everybody has the same incentive where we're all incented to use less raw material, then and by the way, this is what they're doing in Europe. So it's not like we would be the first. Corrugated companies in Europe are using less paper with the same strength. They're actually really ahead of us, I think, in this area. But that said, as long as there's a trade-off, it's just going to take a little while to sort out. But we're still big believers. We're big believers in paper packaging. We're big believers in plastics, and we know that the environmental alternatives are going to be improving. And right now, for the next couple of years, the focus is going to be just using less material.
So, Corey, I'm going to throw a question over your way now. One of the things that Mark talked about is things like hemp and some of the new things that people are testing out in the market. Yeah. What are some of the trends and innovations that you are most excited about in the sustainable packaging space?
I'm very excited about the possibility that we can actually finally replace polystyrene. It's just been the thorn in my side for many years. I've had a milk chocolate company I've worked with for many years, and we've been proposing these new ideas and these alternatives. And finally, we have an alternative called Very Cool, and it's totally sustainable, 100% recyclable, biodegradable, and the costs are similar, and it stores flat, so you don't have to have these styrofoam coolers in your warehouse anymore, which is wonderful. So think about the freight alone that you'll save shipping the raw material to your facility. That alone is very exciting to me. And I'm a self-proposed packaging geek, so that's I'm allowed to geek out about stuff like that. I'm also very excited about something that could potentially replace me someday is the circular economy, and the fact that we'll have reusable, like Mark was saying, reusable packaging, refillables. You can reuse a corrugated box 12 times successfully if you take care of it, and you should. And I encourage people to on my TikTok. I have to admit I have a TikTok page, and I'm the CEO of packaging. I gave myself the title. Don't be upset, anybody. But it's a lot of fun, and there's thousands of people on TikTok. I'm live streaming right now that are interested in sustainable packaging. They're started their own business, and they're incredibly talented people, and they're doing the right things with packaging on a micro scale, and that's growing into macro scales. So I'm very excited. I think the future is bright for packaging. I think we've got a bunch of smart people doing a lot of great things. And I totally agree with what Mark was saying. Down gauging and right sizing packaging is the way to go. Using less material. Thank you.
Corey, what about in the bag space? We talked a lot about boxes today, but bags are really important. Have you seen anything that you're really excited about from an innovation standpoint for bags?
Yes, I really like these paper bags as an alternative to shipping polypropylene plastics. They do just as good of a job, and they're not waterproof, but they're water resistant, so they're not going to last through a rainstorm. But hopefully the UPS and FedEx drivers don't put them on the under the rain. So I think that's the way I've been pushing people for years, is towards paper, if possible. But you do a life cycle analysis on a polypropylene bag, and some will say that it's better. So I like the fact that we can have a very, very thin material for polypropylene, and so that is sustainable in my opinion. So I don't see the hemp materials taken off yet. I agree with Mark. I hope they do soon. So far, testing is proving that the fibers for hemp papers are too short. So we have to make the material really thick, which is causing issues and cracking and things like that in boxes. But we're trying, and we'll continue to try. We will never give up, and we'll do everything we can to be sustainable. We have to.
Now, Corey, do you think it's possible that we will ever actually have a bag that really completely just disintegrates? So I haven't actually seen it live, but I saw a coffee company promoting a fully biodisintegratable bag. So you use the coffee beans, and then once they're gone, poof, the bag is gone. Is that something that do you think actually works and that we'll start to see more in the mainstream?
Yes. I just posted a video about it on my TikTok, believe it or not. And it's a totally biodegradable, water soluble paper pouch. And it was soap, body soap. And I just learned about this yesterday. So I haven't researched it yet, but the answer is yes, and it's going to take time to get it into mainstream. Like Mark said, the more we can get this stuff into mainstream, the more the other stuff becomes less expensive. But I'm hoping that companies will just go the direction of the more sustainable option, and that will increase supply, which will lower cost.
Very interesting. Thank you, Corey. Tom, you do a lot in the printing space. Talk to me about some of the things that you're seeing from a printing ink perspective in regards to packaging. And one of the things I'm interested in is a lot of the waste that's involved with labels, all the labels that are applied to packaging. Are you seeing anything that's innovative there, or do you think we'll actually start seeing the material or information being printed directly on the packaging, completely then eliminating the need for that label waste?
Thank you for the question. I just recently I heard of a company that is printing direct to cans for craft breweries rather than labeling them. I guess the labels create a problem with recycling. It might have been on one of Corey's Clubhouse groups, but I mean, that's one example that potentially could solve some of those problems. Then the aluminum cans are easily recyclable. As far as printing is concerned, because I started in the printing industry selling letterpress, believe it or not, many, many years ago, there's been a tremendous evolution in the mechanisms that are used. As Tim knows, I mean, digital printing of flexible packaging it's a very small percentage of flexible packaging right now, but it's just going to grow like crazy. I sell all different types of digital solutions. There are digital printing solutions for folding cartons. Obviously, Corey understands the digital solutions for corrugate. It's mostly brand oriented, but again, because it's digital, it's more of a just-in-time or print-on-demand solution. So you don't have to produce hundreds of thousands of units. And I think that's only going to spread throughout the print industry. My approach is more, because I'm an independent sales rep, is I'm solution agnostic with most of my clients. And because they're smaller companies, number one, their budgets are much more constrained. So when I'm helping them pick a solution, it really depends on what they're selling, what they're packaging. And like Tim had indicated, these smaller brands are much more engaged in what's going on in terms of global warming. They don't have a vested interest in keeping the status quo. So they're much more creative and more innovative and willing to experiment with different things. And again, it's still an educational process for me. I've only been in the packaging side of things for maybe a decade. But like everybody has contributed, there's an awful lot of innovation going out there on the material side of things. That's only going to accelerate. And with that, a lot of sustainable goals are going to be accomplished. But there's an awful lot of energy going into it right now.
Thank you, Tom. I know a few of you, and Dana, you in particular, are involved, in the food space. And I know packaging is a huge part of the branding process. It's also a huge part of the process in making sure the product doesn't go bad. There's a whole health component. So what are some of the things that you're seeing in regards to packaging actually adding to the life cycle of products, protecting products? I know, like when I order hummus and some of my different health foods, I'm seeing some really cool, unique packaging. And I'm assuming some of that is also helping with the life cycle and how long the food is actually going to last. So Dana or Tim in particular, anything that you're seeing that you want to highlight or talk about from a food perspective?
Yeah, I know just the, and I don't remember who talked about it, but just some of the materials used can play a big role in shelf life. And, there's things suppliers can do with additives and things like that to get longer shelf life. When we looked at our, the HDPE big gallon containers, your shelf life is not nearly like a PET is. So, you can get a much longer shelf life by converting, to a different material, as well as, like I said, on some of our burger patty films that we had, we had a laminated structure. Our customer thought having a laminated structure and, 3.5 mil structure prevented freezer burn. Well, majority of where the freezer burn happens is people put those in their car, drive home, in the 90-degree temperatures, it thaws slightly, they put it in their freezer, and, you get freezer burn. But, that kind of being said, there's, additives you can add to help with shelf life, not have to do the laminated structure. So it's a monolayer structure, which helps with that. So I think there's a lot of cool things. And like I said, reach out to the suppliers. They have, this wealth of knowledge. And, I think it's important that, buyers educate themselves on all these, various on what they're buying and the various packaging formats out there, and keeping abreast of what's new in the market. So great job to you for doing forums like this to keep people, up to speed on all the new types of packaging and stuff.
Yeah, suppliers are not the enemy. You make friends with them. You know a lot.
Exactly.
In the industry.
Yes.
Tim, anything that you're seeing in the cannabis space or in the health food space that is really helping with the shelf life or protecting the food products?
Yeah, there's a couple of films that we've actually used, and I've been working with companies that I'll remain nameless, but basically it's actually 2 plies of compostable films that are laminated with a compostable adhesive. And the top ply is a cellophane, which is pulp or paper based, and the bottom ply is a PBS or a PLA type sealant web. And these, as I said, are laminated with a compostable adhesive. Each of the 3 components have passed the industrial compostability standards here in the United States. Each of those 3 components I just mentioned has passed in Europe both the industrial compostable standards and the household compostable standards. when you put them all together, you've got to go through that whole process again, which is thousands of dollars in several months. But the structures we're working with, each of the components are compostable, certified, and those are the ones we've been, as I said, we've been working with, have had several commercial applications.
Thank you, Tim. We've only got about 4 minutes left, so I want to ask a question to Mark and Corey. This is something that came through earlier about testing and sampling. I know that sometimes it's really hard to get a prototype because it's being done in large runs and it's hard to get a one-off. So what are some best practices or things that you recommend for companies that are wanting to test out new sustainable packaging?
Go ahead first, Corey.
I'm sorry, Sarah, what was the question? I was responding to comments on the, I finally figured out how to do that.
Maybe I'll go.
Yeah. So the question is around what you recommend for people who want to test out some new sustainable packaging. It's something that they haven't done before. It's a new product. It's a new type of packaging. What are some of the best practices or things that companies can do that where it's not too expensive?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Well, we recognize this was going to be a huge issue. Anytime you transition from even one source of supply to another source of supply, testing becomes and qualification become major issues. So one of the things that we did was part of our commitment to bringing in the best from industry is we actually brought in the former head of R&D from one of the top food companies who spent 31 years in qualifying new products, new processes, who happens to be a PhD as well in biochemistry or polymer chemistry or both. I'm not quite sure which. So we actually designed testing protocols specifically for clients to help them through this process. Because again, if you don't have a really slick Six Sigma background or you don't have the scientific expertise, designing the right testing protocol can be really challenging. And one thing you need to be certain of, if you're going to make an investment, particularly for selling meat products like Dana or other food products that are very sensitive, you got to look at the microbial issues. You got to look at the contaminant potential issues. You have to look at forwards and backwards. So one of the things that, again, we did to address it is we brought somebody who was the head of R&D at a food manufacturer in. So we have the capabilities to advise clients on that. But there is no one set answer to this. It is really case by case, product by product. But it's something I think it is not always done with the level of rigor I think that it should be. So, sorry, Corey.
Thank you, sir. Well said. A friend of mine works for Dow Chemical and the packaging division as a packaging scientist. And I think my advice is go back to the raw material, like Tim was saying. Start there. Make sure that's been tested. Make sure that works. Make sure that's biodegradable or compostable or recyclable, whatever your goals are. And then when we bring everything together, the whole package, we can get a company like How to Recycle involved. That's HOW, the number 2, recycle.info. And that is a great source to go to ask them to register your packaging as recyclable, or what to do. You're basically, I think one of the major issues in the whole packaging industry is this. Customers don't know what to do with the packaging. Do I recycle it? Do I compost it? Do I put it in the garden? You know, that's the problem. I just got a package yesterday that looks totally biodegradable to me, but I don't know what it is. It doesn't say. So I think it's on us. It's on us to remind our customers and our clients to educate their end users what to do. How do I recycle this? How do I reuse it? How do I compost it? And that's on us as an industry, I think.
Yeah, Corey, thank you. I bought shorts for my dad for his birthday from the clothing company called Prana. They're a big company that's in the sustainability space. They tout no plastic in their packaging. It's a big focus of not only their products, but their packaging. And when I got the bag, It comes not in a box, in a bag, which is fit nicely. And they actually have printed on the bag, please save and reuse this bag. And I thought that was really helpful. They gave me clear instructions on what to do with the bag. Had they not done that, I wouldn't even thought of saving it and reusing it.
Yeah. I have to drop, so I want to say thank you to everybody. Pleasure to have seen Tim again, Corey, Tom, and Dana. Nice to have met you. And Sarah, thank you to you and your team for putting something like this together. It's great to talk about it. Unfortunately, I'd love to stay, but I got to jump on another call to address a very similar issue in real life. And so I thank you all for your time and hope to reconnect soon. Thanks,
all right, Mark. And with that, we are just at time. So I want to thank Dana, Tim, Mark, Tom, and Corey for sharing your insights about sustainable packaging with our audience today. If you found our discussion valuable, join us again next month on May 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern, and we are going to be discussing corrugated packaging. I encourage you to follow all of us speakers on LinkedIn. Feel free to interact with our posts and engage with us. We are all doing a lot of really innovative and unique things in the packaging space. So with that, have a wonderful afternoon or evening, and we will see you back next month on our show on the 18th.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thanks, Sarah.